Why is it that the man who says the least often leaves the deepest impact? Why do women find themselves pulled toward the man cloaked in silence, unpredictability, and emotional distance? I watched a friend get tangled in it once. A man who never gave her straight answers, never truly opened up, but somehow made her feel seen. "There's just something about him," she whispered. "It's like he's hiding a world inside." But weeks turned into months, and all she ever found was more mystery. No clarity, no truth, just the illusion of depth wrapped in silence. It wasn't just him, it was something in her, in all of us, that gets triggered by mystery, that wants to believe the unreadable man holds secret wisdom, secret passion, secret love, if only we could unlock it. In this video, we're peeling back the psychology and philosophy behind that pull, using the powerful insights of Carl Jung, who understood how deeply the unconscious drives our desire. Stay with me, because by the end, you won't just understand why mysterious men capture hearts. You'll see what part of your own heart was always chasing the mystery, not the man. 1. The magnetic pull of mystery attraction beyond logic. There's something haunting about the man who doesn't reveal himself, who keeps his past vague, his emotions guarded, his intentions unreadable, and somehow you want him more. But why? It's not logic, it's biology. It's not his words, it's his absence of them. Human psychology is wired to respond to what's unknown. The less we know, the more our minds work to make sense of it. And that work becomes emotional investment. Mystery is magnetic because it triggers curiosity, anticipation, and uncertainty, the emotional cocktail that fuels attraction. Every unanswered question becomes a hook. Every vague response becomes a puzzle. And your brain, it lights up desperately trying to solve him. But here's the twist. The mystery isn't about him, it's about what he awakens in you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And mystery doesn't just irritate, it hypnotizes. It invites your unconscious desires to play, the need for adventure, the thrill of risk, the fantasy of being the one to finally understand him. So this isn't just a man, he's become a mirror for your deepest longing. Let's dig into what Jung says about the unconscious and why mystery activates something ancient inside us. 2. Carl Jung and the allure of the unknown. Carl Jung didn't just study human behavior, he studied the layers beneath it. To him, what we're drawn to isn't random, it's the echo of something unresolved, something buried in the unconscious. And nothing stirs the unconscious like mystery. When a man is unreadable, Jung would say, he becomes a symbol, not just a person, but an invitation to go inward. The mysterious man becomes a living doorway into your own psyche, a mirror of what you've suppressed, what you crave, what you haven't yet integrated. That's why your heart races for someone who reveals so little, because you're not reacting to his reality. You're responding to the symbolic weight he carries. Jung called this the anima projection, when a woman projects her inner ideal, her emotional and spiritual longings, onto a man. And who better to carry that projection than someone who never contradicts it? The less he says, the more he becomes. He becomes wisdom, passion, safety, power, all the things your soul wants, and he doesn't even have to say a word, because in that silence, your unconscious speaks louder than ever. But where does this story come from? Let's trace it back into the myth of the enigmatic lover. 3. The myth of the enigmatic lover. Heathcliff, Mr. Darcy, Jay Gatsby, Batman, they're not just fictional, they're fantasies wrapped in flesh and silence. For centuries, literature and cinema have glorified the man who doesn't speak, who broods, who suffers in silence, whose mystery is mistaken for depth. He stands in shadows, speaks in riddles, and hides his pain like it's a secret worth earning. And women chase him, not because they know him, but because they want to be the one who finally will. Carl Jung would point to the collective unconscious, a shared well of archetypes passed down through generations. One of those archetypes, the enigmatic lover, a man whose distance feels like desire, whose silence feels sacred, whose emotional armor feels like an invitation to break it. These stories are not just entertainment, they are scripts embedded in the unconscious mind. And when you meet a man who fits the silhouette, even faintly, something awakens inside you. Not attraction, but recognition. He feels familiar because the myth has lived in you all along. But here's the danger: myths are not men. And when we confuse the two, we don't fall in love, we fall into illusion. Let's now explore what really happens when desire meets projection. 4. Projection and desire, falling for your own reflection. Have you ever looked at someone and felt something massive, even when they've shared so little about who they are? That's not connection, that's projection. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And projection is how we hide from ourselves, by seeing what we long for in someone else. The mysterious man is the perfect projection screen, because he doesn't speak much, he doesn't reveal himself, and that silence creates space. Space for your imagination, your wounds, your hopes to write the story for him. You fill in the blanks with dreams. You imagine he's deep because you long for emotional depth. You believe he's guarded because you crave vulnerability. You assume he's been hurt because you've been. And in that process, you're not really seeing him. You're staring at a mirror, a reflection of your own unmet needs dressed in someone else's silhouette. Jung warned that unless we become conscious of these projections, we'll keep calling them fate. But fate doesn't ignore you, confuse you, or keep you guessing. That's not fate, that's fantasy. Let's now examine how mystery hijacks the brain itself and turns uncertainty into obsession. 5. The dopamine trap, mystery and the brain's reward system. Unpredictability isn't just emotional, it's chemical. When a man is mysterious, when he gives just enough to spark interest and then disappears behind a veil of silence, your brain lights up like a game of roulette. This is called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the same pattern that makes slot machines addictive. You don't know when he'll text back, when he'll open up, when he'll let you in. So when he does, it feels like a win, a rush, a dopamine hit. This creates obsession, not because he's special, but because your brain now links his inconsistency to pleasure. You start working harder for less, confusing emotional withdrawal with emotional worth. Jung would say, this isn't love, it's possession by the unconscious. You're not choosing, you're being pulled. And the more inconsistent he is, the more valuable he feels, until you forget what real love is supposed to feel like. 6. Fixing the puzzle, the fantasy of unraveling him. There's another layer to this attraction, the fantasy of being the one who understands him. You start decoding every word, every silence, every look. You believe, if I'm patient enough, gentle enough, loving enough, he'll finally open up. This is the fixer fantasy, rooted in the hope that your love can unlock his mystery. Jung would call this a projection of the self's unfinished work. You're not just trying to love him, you're trying to rescue yourself through him. You're seeking meaning in his confusion, but sometimes there is no puzzle. There's just a man who doesn't want to be understood. And chasing that, it slowly erodes your clarity, your boundaries, your identity. 7. Emotional distance, why it feels so familiar. So why do we stay? Why do we keep returning to the man who never fully shows up? Because emotional distance often feels familiar. Jung believed our earliest wounds shape our later desires. If you grew up chasing love from a distracted parent, an absent father, an emotionally unavailable caregiver, you learned that love feels like pursuit. You didn't receive affection, you earned it. You didn't feel seen, you worked to be visible. And now when a man holds back, your inner child awakens, desperate to win. He doesn't feel new, he feels like home. But Jung warned us, until we make that unconscious pattern conscious, we'll keep calling it chemistry. Let's now step into the bigger picture, society's role in shaping this mystique. 8. Masculinity and the silent archetype. From ancient warriors to Hollywood anti-heroes, we've been conditioned to associate silence with strength. He doesn't cry, he doesn't explain, he doesn't chase, and somehow, that makes him more of a man. Carl Jung spoke of the archetype of the masculine hero, stoic, untouchable, mysterious. It's an image embedded deep within the collective unconscious, shaping what we desire even if we don't understand why. Movies glorify him, books romanticize him, society praises him, the man who suffers in silence, who feels deeply but shows nothing, who bears the weight of the world behind unreadable eyes. But here's the trap. We mistake repression for power. Silence becomes a performance. Emotional detachment becomes the badge of real men. And in that process, we forget that strength also speaks, that real masculinity can cry, connect, and communicate. Jung would urge us to question the archetype, to see through the glamour and ask, is this mystery, or is this emotional unavailability dressed as nobility? 9. Awakening to reality, breaking the spell. There's a moment, quiet but seismic, when the illusion falls away. When the man who once seemed complex now looks simple, not because he changed, but because you did. You started listening with your soul, not your hopes. You stopped assigning meaning to his distance. You stopped translating his silence into love. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole by pulling back your projections and seeing reality as it is. No myths, no symbols, just truth. And the truth? He may never have been mysterious. He may have just been emotionally unavailable, or emotionally immature, or simply not that interested. But instead of heartbreak, you feel something else. Liberation. Because now you are free to see what's real, not what you hoped would be real. You are free to choose depth over drama, clarity over confusion, love over longing. Let's close this with the shift Jung believed changes everything. 10. The shift to wholeness, choosing clarity over mystery. You no longer chase the shadows. You no longer find comfort in confusion. Because something inside you has changed, you've awakened to your own clarity. Carl Jung taught that real love starts when we stop seeking completion in others and start embodying it in ourselves. This is the shift to wholeness, when you no longer crave mystery because you found meaning within. You no longer ask, why is he so distant? You start asking, why do I keep accepting distance as desire? You realize you don't want a riddle, you want a relationship. You don't need a man who hides, you need a man who shows up. The mysterious man loses his grip, not because he changed, but because you did. You've reclaimed your projections. You've pulled your dreams back from his silence. You've returned to the one voice that always told the truth, your own. And from this place, something new begins. A love that doesn't keep you guessing, a connection that doesn't play hide and seek. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you do, you'll never again mistake mystery for love."